The night thunder vanished. Even the stars forgot how to breathe. The skies of Asgard trembled, not with fury but with silence. A silence so deep it swallowed the golden light, a hush so heavy it pressed against the bones of the world. No thunder rolled, no lightning danced. Even the ancient wind, keeper of forgotten songs, seemed to pause in fear. High above the Bifröst, Thor stood alone, his red cloak whipping like a battle cry against the void. Mjolnir hung in his hand, but the hammer's hum had dulled, a dying heartbeat trembling against the cosmos. And then, beneath the silence, a whisper, a crack in the air, fragile as glass, speaking of shadows waking, of realms quietly bending toward ruin. When thunder dies, the world trembles, Thor murmured, eyes like molten gold. But this time, the whisper was louder than prophecy. This time, the storm was calling him. For somewhere in the heart of the 9 realms, a thief had stolen the breath of the skies, and Asgard, shining cradle of gods, was gasping its last. The end had begun, and Thor was the only thunder left to answer. The skies above Asgard were no longer golden. They were bruised, deep violet bleeding into black, streaked with silver whispers of a storm that had forgotten its own name. A hush had fallen. Not the peaceful hush of twilight, but the hollow hush of a world holding its breath. Even the ravens of Odin, those eternal messengers of fate, circled without a sound, wings slicing the wind like whispers of doom. Thor stood upon the Bifröst, the rainbow bridge glowing faintly beneath his boots, trembling like a dying ember. His red cloak flapped wildly, but the wind brought no roar, no promise of rain or storm, only an unbearable, aching silence. Mjolnir, once a symphony of thunder in his grasp, now throbbed faintly, as if even the hammer mourned. It was not a hum of power, it was a pulse of warning, weak and flickering. The prophecy came back to him, not in words, but in a shiver that ran down his spine like frozen lightning. When thunder grows silent, shadows shall gain a voice. Shadows already stirred. In corners unseen, in spaces unmeasured. And for the first time in centuries, Thor felt the tremor of fear coil around his chest. "Father," he whispered, voice breaking across the void, "is this the doom you foretold?" But Odin's silence answered only with the sigh of a dying wind. Beneath him, the Bifröst quivered. Above him, the heavens held their breath. And somewhere, beyond sight, the first stirrings of a thief of storms moved through the realms, unseen, unstoppable, and hungry for the heart of the sky itself. Thor's hand tightened on Mjolnir. Lightning shivered faintly along the hammer's edges, a weak pulse, but a pulse nonetheless. The storm had not abandoned him entirely. It had merely whispered a question. "Do you have the courage to wake it, one last time?" And Thor, son of Odin, thunder's last heir, lifted his gaze to the darkened heavens. The journey had begun. The end was near, and the last thunder of Asgard was calling his name. The world held its breath. Not even the wind dared stir, not even the stars blinked. Above the golden spires of Asgard, the sky hung like a blackened veil, empty, accusing and waiting. The storm had gone silent. The thunder itself had vanished, leaving behind only a hollow that echoed in the bones of every god and mortal alike. Thor entered the war room, the great doors groaning as if in mourning. Warriors bowed, but their eyes were wide with a fear they could not name. Maps of lightning and storm crisscrossed the hall, once blazing, now dimming, turning black as though the very breath of the skies had been drained. Sif approached, her presence a blade of dawn cutting through the shadow. "Thor, the storm wells are empty." Her words fell like shards of frozen lightning. "Empty?" His voice rumbled, deep as a canyon, yet hollow without the thunder to back it. "Yes," she said, eyes flickering with the last sparks of hope. "The lightning has vanished from its very cradle." Fandral's voice was softer, tremulous, yet sharper than any sword, and whispers say, "Something has stolen the heart of the storm." A chill rose, creeping along Thor's spine. If the heart of the storm was gone, then Asgard breathed only borrowed air. A realm without thunder was a realm on the edge of death. Mjolnir felt impossibly heavy in his hand. The hammer pulsed faintly, a dying ember struggling against a stormless sky. Thor lifted it, eyes aflame, the fire of ancient courage burning against the void. "Prepare for the journey to the Storm Forge." He spoke not as a god, but as a son, answering the call of destiny. "If the storm is dying, then we shall go to its birthplace, and if the thief dares meet us, then we shall remind him that no darkness can silence the thunder forever." The war room seemed to shiver at his words, for in that proclamation the last hope of Asgard had spoken, and the storm, though silent, had already begun to stir. The 9 realms whispered in fear. Even the stars seemed to shrink from what came next. Thor's boots struck the frozen ground of the frost wastes, each step a drumbeat against the silence of a dying cosmos. Snow fell like shards of crystal memory, each flake carrying the chill of forgotten storms and whispered curses of gods long past. The wind tore at his cloak, but it carried no song, no fury, only the weight of a world teetering on the edge of shadow. Beyond the wastes stretched the Abyssal Canyons, where the sun had forgotten to rise. Shadows pooled like ink in the cracks of reality, reaching for him with unseen hands. And beyond that, the Obsidian Sea, black waves surging like living nightmares, devouring the horizon with a hunger older than time. Thunder spirits, once children of joy and lightning, now fled like broken stars. Their cries cracked the air, jagged and desperate, lightning splintering into shards of blue fire. Mjolnir glowed faintly, pulsing as Thor swung it not as a weapon but as a beacon. The hammer's strike calmed the spirits, coaxing them back into shards of pure energy, little flickers of hope in a sky gone mad. Sif's eyes were wide, reflecting the eerie glow of dying light. "Even the storm is suffering," she whispered, voice trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. Thor's gaze hardened, a tempest forming behind molten eyes. "Then the thief of thunder is no mere enemy," he said, voice low and unstoppable. "He is a murderer of the sky itself." The realms stretched endlessly, a tapestry of danger and despair. And Thor, heir to thunder, walked that path alone, yet unbowed, each step echoing with the promise of vengeance, the song of a storm waiting to awaken. For in the silence between snow and shadow, he could hear it, the heartbeat of the last thunder, faint but alive, calling him forward. The journey had begun in earnest. No light would guide them, no mercy would follow, only the storm and the wrath of a god determined to awaken it, before Asgard and all realms were swallowed by silence. The roots of Yggdrasil trembled beneath them, as though the world tree itself knew the sorrow that awaited. Thor, Sif, and Fandral stood at the threshold of the Storm Forge, a cavern carved from the bones of the earth, where lightning once learned to sing and thunder first drew breath. Now it lay dead, not in ruin, but in absence. No crackle of energy, no shimmer of sparks, only the hollow echo of a world that had forgotten how to roar. The air itself seemed heavier, molten shadows pressing against their armor, whispering of a force older than the gods themselves. And then the ground shook. A voice rumbled from the depths, vibrating through stone and bone alike. "Did you come seeking thunder, son of Odin, or to witness its grave? Surtr emerged, not merely a fire giant but a living apocalypse. Molten armor glowed like twin suns. Flames licked the cavern walls yet did not burn. In his grasp pulsed the heart of the storm, weak, trembling like a bird trapped in a cage of flame. Sif gasped. Fandral cursed. Thor's chest burned with the electric taste of rage and despair. "Surtr, what have you done?" Thor's voice thundered, though no thunder answered him. "I have stolen the breath of the skies," Surtr said, his grin splitting like magma. "And soon, Asgard will choke on silence." The shadows in the cavern surged like living smoke. Every step forward was met with a pulse of heat and shadow, warning of the power they now faced. Thor lifted Mjolnir, sparks crawling along its surface, pulsing with a hesitant heartbeat. His eyes flared. The last thunder whispered through him, faint but alive. And for the first time since the storm went silent, hope trembled in the air. "The storm lives somewhere," Thor said through gritted teeth. "And if it calls, then I will answer, even if the sky itself falls silent beneath my wrath." The cavern held its breath. The fire roared, the storm waited, and the battle of fire and thunder was about to begin. The cavern trembled as if Yggdrasil itself were screaming in pain. Flames surged like living dragons, hissing and coiling, licking the roots of the world tree. Lightning flickered weakly from Thor's Mjolnir, hesitant at first, then gathering strength as his heartbeat synced with the pulse of the storm. Surtr moved like molten fury incarnate, a volcano in motion, every step cracking stone, every breath a promise of annihilation. Thor advanced, red cloak snapping in the heat, eyes burning brighter than the fires around him. Steel clashed against storm, fire met lightning. The air vibrated with power so ancient that it hummed through bone, blood, and sky alike. Sif darted between flames, her blade singing a melody of silver sparks. Fandral moved like shadow and wind, striking, feinting, a dancer in the inferno, keeping the fire at bay. Mjolnir struck, not merely as weapon, but as conductor of the storm, sending arcs of pure lightning spiraling through the cavern, tearing at Surtr's molten armor, yet met with a fury that burned even brighter. Each strike was a verse. Each roar was a chorus. The cavern itself became a musical battlefield, a symphony of creation and destruction, composed by gods and giants alike. Thor's voice thundered over the cacophony. "You shall not silence the skies. You shall not kill the storm." Surtr's laugh was molten and cruel, echoing like a chorus of destruction. "Then let us see whose music will survive." The roots of Yggdrasil cracked, and sparks of ancient magic leapt like living creatures. Flames twisted into serpents of fire. Lightning danced like silver dragons. And then, the storm answered. A faint pulse at first, trembling in Mjolnir, a heartbeat, a whisper of the last thunder, weaving itself into Thor's veins. Thor's eyes flared. The lightning grew stronger. Every strike, every roar, every scream became a crescendo. The heart of the storm pulsed in Surtr's hand, crying out for freedom. Thor knew the battle was not won with strength alone. It would be won with the song of the storm, the voice of the last thunder. And so the cavern of Yggdrasil became a stage for legend, a place where fire, lightning, and courage collided, where every heartbeat and every spark played its part in the symphony of the cosmos. The cavern shook with a fury older than time. Fire roared like ancient dragons, lightning screamed like silver serpents, and yet, in the center of it all, Thor fell to one knee, chest burning, Mjolnir dimmed, a pulse fading in his grasp. Surtr loomed above him, molten armor blazing brighter than suns, every step cracking the roots of Yggdrasil. "You cannot win, thunderless god," the fire giant rumbled, flames licking toward Thor like claws. But then something trembled beneath the chaos. A heartbeat, faint, fragile, yet unmistakable. The heart of the storm, pulsing weakly in Surtr's grasp, cried out in a language older than gods. Not for power, not for revenge, but for hope. Thor looked at it and understood. The storm was not dead. It was calling him. It had chosen him. It begged him to rise, one final time. "If I must give my life to save the skies," Thor whispered, voice steady as the eye of a hurricane, "then let the storm take me." Mjolnir rose from his hand, faint sparks blossoming into arcs, spiraling like silver dragons through the inferno. Lightning answered him. Thunder thrummed in the air, and the storm, the last thunder of Asgard, awoke. It began quietly, a whisper of wind, a flicker of light, then louder. A roar that shook the cavern, the roots, the very cosmos. Surtr screamed as lightning danced across the air, arcs spinning into him like vengeful serpents of the storm. The heart of the storm pulsed, breaking free from molten fingers, drawn to Thor as if to a parent to its child. And then, the last thunder. It was not merely a bolt, it was a symphony, a torrent of power, light and sound that tore through shadows, shattered fire and rended the very air. Reality itself shuddered, time bent, and Surtr, the living volcano, was ripped away, cast screaming into the void beneath Yggdrasil. Silence followed. Not empty silence, but the deep, trembling calm of a storm fulfilled. The heart of the storm floated in Thor's hands, warm, alive, glowing like the first sunrise over a world reborn. Thor rose to his full height. Mjolnir thrummed with the thunder of creation, alive with divine song. And as he looked across the cavern, through fire-scorched stone and lightning-riven roots, he whispered, "The storm lives." "No," Sif said, breathless, awestruck. "It lives in us." And the 9 realms exhaled. The storm sang. Thunder rolled. Lightning danced across the heavens like silver rivers in celebration. Asgard had survived. The last thunder had called, and Thor had answered. The skies of Asgard glowed with a brilliance that made the golden towers weep in joy. Thunder rolled, deep and resonant, weaving through the spires like an eternal hymn. Lightning danced, not in rage, but in celebration, silver ribbons spiraling across the heavens, tracing the heartbeat of a world saved. Thor stood atop the tallest tower, Mjolnir humming with a thunder alive and whole, pulsing with the last thunder he had summoned. Sif stood beside him, armor scorched but eyes bright, and Fandral laughed, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling in his voice. The realms themselves seemed to breathe. The roots of Yggdrasil straightened. The winds carried whispers of relief to every corner of the 9 realms. The storm, once silent, almost lost, now sang a triumphant song, echoing in every valley, mountain, and sky. "The last thunder lives," Sif whispered, voice trembling like sunlight through rain. "No," Thor corrected softly, eyes gleaming like molten gold. "It lives in us." The storm was not merely a force of nature. It was courage, hope, and unbroken will. It was the legacy of gods, the heartbeat of realms, and the promise that even in silence life could roar again. Across the 9 realms, lightning flowed like silver rivers, weaving through skies, mountains, and seas. The air was alive with the hum of renewal, the gentle whisper of thunder singing across distant worlds. In the quiet moments between storms, the people of the realms spoke in hushed awe. Asgard endures. Legends never fade. And in the heart of the Golden City, Thor stood sentinel, not as a god of mere power, but as the keeper of hope, the listener to the last thunder, the protector of the worlds. The skies glimmered, Mjolnir thrummed, and the storm, eternal, alive, and free, flowed through him as it flowed through every heartbeat of the 9 realms. The sun rose over Asgard, painting gold across towers, seas, and forests. The storm calmed, but its song remained, a gentle promise echoing across the cosmos. Asgard endures, and the hearts of heroes never fade. The realms were safe, the thunder was alive, and the legend of Thor and the last thunder of Asgard would echo forever. The storm calmed. The sky glowed in gentle golds and soft blues, as if the heavens themselves were sighing in relief. Thunder hummed softly, no longer a roar, but a quiet, eternal heartbeat, a lullaby for the 9 realms. Thor stood alone atop the golden towers of Asgard, Mjolnir pulsing lightly in his hand. He gazed across the horizon, where lightning still flickered in playful arcs, and the winds carried whispers of victory and hope. The weight of the worlds rested on him, yet he stood unbowed, a sentinel of realms, a guardian of the last thunder. The heart of the storm had returned, alive, eternal, and bound to courage, hope, and unyielding will. And in that gentle hum of the reborn skies, a promise lingered. Asgard endures, legends never fade, and the heart of a hero beats forever. Golden towers, dancing lightning, and the serene expanse of a realm reborn stretch across the horizon. The storm whispers its thanks, a soft musical chord lingering in the air, as if the heavens themselves exhale in relief. A new dawn rises, carved from thunder's sacrifice and fire's defeat. And high above the shimmering sky, destiny itself watches, knowing the age of legends has only just begun. If this tale stirred your imagination, let your support echo across the realms. Please like, share, and subscribe, and walk with us once more into worlds where thunder breathes, legends rise, and stories live forever.